conservation technology. It includes AI, coding, climate resilience, technology, sensors, the environment, and so much more. Pretty much all the tech and environmental topics that are relevant in our current society. Yet, what is it? Well, it's an evolving and innovative field, and this could be your future career path, even if you're currently in another field.
For younger people like ourselves who are still in like the first decade or two of their career, pivoting career paths is so feasible, absolutely worth pursuing any sort of change like that if that's what's going to bring you closer to doing work that feels authentic and meaningful.
Today we're joined by Esther and Alex. They're both from WILDLABS. WILDLABS is a leading community in global conservation technology. They unite 8,500 members across more than 120 countries. What they do is that they support conservation technology by this vibrant community. They also conduct research on the sector, unlock cross-sector resources through partnerships, and as well as that have been in many places talking about conservation technology such as United Nations and created like a new program currently in East Africa. Now, what is conservation technology? How do you get started? And why is it a path that can become a meaningful career for you? Well, let's find out. This is the Gen Z Instant Podcast. I'm your host, Myadrin, and I hope you're as excited as I am. Let's get to it. So, hi. Today I'm joined with Esther and Alex, and we're going to have a conversation on conservation technology. So before we get started, well, welcome. And maybe if, Alex, you could introduce yourself, and then Esther.
Sure. My name is Alex Rood. I am the Communications and Community Associate Specialist at WILDLABS, and I just joined the team about 4 months ago, back in late January of 2024. And I'm based out of New Jersey. I'm hosted by the World Wildlife Fund. And yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
So I complement Alex's work. So my name is Esther Githinji, and I've been at WILDLABS now for the last year and 2 months, I think. And so I started off as the East Africa coordinator, and now I'm the program assistant for the East Africa level growth that we do. I'm based at Fauna and Flora, Kenya, and super excited to be here and get into conservation tech.
Yeah, great. Okay, so to start off, about conservation technology, so it includes technology, sustainability, AI, and it's like all these topics are super like relevant in society. They're becoming more present and important in society for so many reasons, you know, for like allocation of resources, agriculture resilience, and so many climate resilience, and so many more things. But actually the word conservation technology is not so much known. So really I want to go into it today, and to start off, what is conservation technology and what does it entail?
Yeah, so for me, conservation technology is actually a lot more simple than you would think. At least in my mind, it's anybody using technology to assist in like wildlife conservation efforts, between like complex systems like machine learning or AI or high-tech drones to just, you know, like computers and like GPS color tags. Really, I think so much of our world is obviously high-tech these days, between like the phones in our pockets and just the way we get around and these massive supercomputers that we have. Technology is so much more prevalent in conservation than people might think, and I think that all of that is considered conservation tech, more so than just, you know, the high gadget items that you might think of when you think of technology. I think any sort of tech being used in conservation is considered conservation tech, at least to me.
Yeah. And Esther, do you have anything to add about this?
I think conservation tech is it's a new emerging space. So most people might have heard of like climate tech, green tech. They're acquainted with those spaces. But I think conservation tech, like just like Alex has mentioned, I think the easiest way to think about it is tech for wildlife. And one of the easiest ways that we do that in WILDLABS, getting people acquainted with conservation tech, is our annual Tech for Wildlife Photo Challenge. We've been doing it for the last 8 years. Alex will explain more about that going forward. But it basically is showcasing conservation tech in action in the field. And so people get to see what conservation tech is, because, you know, even like we use so many like terms describing like this is conservation tech, and it gets a bit jargonious. And so when people actually see it and they get to be like, oh, okay, I understand it now. I've seen it. I see videos. I see pictures. I understand it. I understand how it's applied. I understand why it's important. So people can hashtag Tech for Wildlife and just check out like the thousands of posts across all social media platforms, and they'll get a good idea of what it is. But it's basically using, you know, tech tools and innovations to protect and preserve our world's wildlife, in the simplest of words.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Alex, so like in the conservational tech space, what's your favorite part of the global community?
I think my favorite part since joining and sort of getting involved in the sector, getting to know people, is how eager everybody is to sort of help each other out, which is really interesting to see, and I think is a factor of conservation tech being still sort of like in its infancy compared to other fields, is that people are just so eager and willing and able to connect each other to the resources that they need, to the information that they need, to the collaborators that they need, because at the end of the day, all of these people are doing their research for like the greater good of protecting wildlife and wildlife conservation. And there's just so much generosity in knowledge and information and resources that is just so inspiring to see. And that's my favorite part, is just how generally like kind everybody is and willing to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And to you, Esther?
Yes. So I think from my perspective, because I focus more on the global south, I think the work that I do in East Africa is focused on the global south. But I think what we do at WildLabs, which is the global conservation tech community, we focus on ensuring that underrepresented groups can get access to resources to allow them to actively participate and benefit from conservation technology. So even if it is an emerging space, we're just making sure that no one is left behind and everyone can actively participate. So I think, from my side, is making sure that people from the global south, women, youth, can actively participate and benefit from it, because we know that they're the most in close proximity with nature in most of the circumstances. And of course, when there are issues with nature, they are the most vulnerable and likely to be affected negatively. So we ensure that in our programming, we do consider how we are ensuring inclusion and representation.
Okay, so an inclusive community like that shares resources and that is like constantly and right now growing. I love that. But then, okay, how about like getting conservation technology? So we know a bit about conservation technology now, but if I'm someone who's interested, like, how do I get started? And this approach might vary. So yeah, someone gets started. Where's the way to start?
So I would say it really depends on what, sort of, I guess the answer is sort of the same, but it's still worthwhile to say that it depends what sort of section of conservation tech you're looking to get involved in, because I think the way we would like to break it down is having like 4 main areas, which is tech development, tech users, tech scalers, and tech innovators, or tech enablers. So you have like tech developers, like mechanical engineers, software engineers, programmers, the people that are actually like making new tech, like the actual hardware and software that people are using, versus people that are using this conservation tech in the field, like field biologists or rangers and whatnot, versus scalers, which are people that are working in, sort of accelerators or nonprofits or government agencies. And I think each of those paths, each of those areas requires a sort of different path to go down. But I would say that one of the umbrella organizations to get involved in, just to see what opportunities are out there, to connect with other people in the field, to make those important connections that end up opening up, doors and opportunities, would be a place like WildLabs, which is sort of a repository for all of the information you can ever need in terms of networking, of knowledge sharing, of event planning and communication and community. It's just such an incredible resource that sort of holds all of the information you could ever need on conservation tech, from job opportunities to PhD openings to people saying, hey, I live in this place and I'm looking for, somebody to just grab a coffee with and chat about career opportunities. Is anybody around? WildLabs, I might be a little bit biased, but I do think it is one of the best places to get started in just seeing what opportunities are out there, what other people are doing, and, sort of seeing how you can get involved.
And what's the value of being an active member in this like WildLab space?
I would say being an active member has a ton of perks. One, like I said, you sort of have this like encyclopedia of knowledge right at your fingertips. We have over 8,500 members across 120 different countries that span all these different, sort of subcategories of conservation tech, whether it's drones or AI or biologging or marine conservation. And each of our members is, spans people that are just interested in citizen science and are, just sort of concerned citizens, from people that are absolutely experts in their field and have been at the top of their game for the last 10 years. And I think being active in the community gives you that sort of that doorway to like peer inside their minds, learn about the work that they're doing, ask them questions, But even more importantly, I think the value of being an active member is that they sort of get to do the same to you, that you are a name that's familiar to them, and that when they hear of a job opportunity or a research grant, they know the work that you're doing, they know who you are, and those connections are more easily formed because they're like, okay, Maya is somebody that's looking for a job in this field. Here's this job opportunity. Like, let me get her set up with the person who's hiring. Stuff like that.
And in the things you've mentioned, there's so many different parts that I feel are like part of conservation technology, because like 4 branches and then go into so many like sub parts. So then from your guys' experience, like, do you need to be in a specific like bachelor's or go a certain path to get into conservation?
I would say that again, conservation technology is an emerging space, and so they are you know there are academic programs that you can do at universities, at colleges, but they're quite few. And at the end of the day, again, WILDLABS is the global conservation technology community. It's like, Alex mentioned, it's the repository for all the resources that you need curated for anyone who's interested in getting started in conservation technology. So, on the platform, we have programming, we have tech tutors, which has gone on for a number of seasons, where you can get access to instructors and people who are training on different parts of conservation technology that you might be interested in. Like you mentioned, Maya, like it's quite a sparse space. It's quite broad, and so most people getting in would maybe have an idea, like, I'm interested in AI, or I'm interested in human wildlife conflict mitigation, or I'm interested in citizen science, like Alex had mentioned. And so having programming that's very specific to certain things. And of course, there are people who are interested, mentally young people who are making this looks like a cool page to get involved in, but I don't have an idea on what specifically I'm looking for, and that's why we have a monthly catch-up series that goes on called Variety Hour, where you can just stop by and have a look. Basically, like getting a foot to the door in understanding conservation technology from the conservation technology community. So you come on, have a look at what people are working on, the projects that they're doing, research that people are on about, and just updates on what's happening in the conservation technology community from around the globe. And so it kind of gives you like a looking glass into what the space is, and maybe giving you ideas on what you'd be interested in. And that's why we really encourage people, when they join WILDLABS, to join groups that they feel like might be aligned with what they want to do, because then they get more information. And of course, at WILDLABS, we have the Women in Conservation Tech program going on. That's been going on for the last 2 years. We're doing the 3rd one this year in a couple of weeks. And that program is really designed to help young women interested in getting into conservation technology careers and upskilling them and giving them I think the general tech skills they need to get started, because most of them have conservation backgrounds. And so just giving them that extra tech upskilling so that they can start looking into careers, and also being innovators themselves and coming up with conservation tech innovations. But I think for anyone who's interested in getting involved in conservation tech, even if they are looking for programs, again, WILDLABS is the best space. We have a resources page where, like Alex mentioned, programs are uploaded, internships, volunteerships, training opportunities. And so WILDLABS is still the best space for somebody to get started, so they understand not just the training opportunities, but also who is conservation tech. I know we always ask what is conservation tech, but who is conservation? Who are the people in conservation tech? And sometimes you might find that it's somebody who kind of guides you through conservation technology. You might connect with somebody from a similar country, similar age, similar background on WILDLABS, and that person might be your guide into getting involved in conservation technology. So again, WILDLABS is your go-to for getting started in conservation technology, whether it's a career or something that you're interested in actually doing in the future.
Okay, and I love that you mentioned the conservation technology program in Tanzania right now. I do want to go back to it a bit later. But I'm also just curious, is there like a difference in like opportunities for people who are in, like, for instance, North America or East Africa? Or is it like also just with WILDLABS, anyone can just access it and it's like similar opportunities or not?
Yeah, so we can probably tag team this, Esther. So WILDLABS is open to, is a free platform that's open to anybody. And I will say that I think one of the major pain points in conservation tech, and in conservation and the fight against climate change, is that so much of the resources are sort of being held in the global north and are not available in the global south, which is by and large where the resources need to be the most, because the most change is going to be happening through empowering indigenous and local groups on the ground, which is something that WildLabs is really fighting to change by building these regional hubs like in East Africa, and we're in the process of building one in South America as well. But yeah, Esther, I'm sure you have more to say on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Alex has really touched on the idea that we are a global space, and we of course understand the importance of inclusion and representation. So we do have programs that are specific to certain regions. So like our Women in Conservation Tech program has been going on for the last 2 years within East Africa, because we do understand the importance of empowering young East African women in conservation and getting them upskilled in conservation tech skills. And we also have other resources and programming like the WildLabs Awards, which we went this year for the very first time. And so the WildLabs Awards was a global opportunity for us to fund people who are innovating or scaling some of their conservation tech projects. And it is an award program that was open to as many diverse groups as possible, making sure that we are representing conservation tech across the world. And so we do offer different types of programs and resources and opportunities to make sure that we're representing conservation tech in its entirety. But then we do also understand the importance of kind of targeted programs that are meeting certain needs. And for us to know what those needs are, we run an annual State of Conservation Tech survey, where we ask the conservation technology community, what are your needs? What are you having issues, accessing? What are your challenges? And so that gives us kind of the opportunity to understand our community and to understand what we need to curate better for them. And so out of that came the Women in Conservation Tech program for East Africa women. Out of that came the WildLabs Awards. And so by understanding the needs of our community, we're able to curate resources for them. And that's a survey that we do every year. And it helps us to know also the opportunity spaces. So we get to know, okay, which tech is a space that we should be offering more opportunities in. Of course, right now AI is, I think, is the thing that everyone is so focused on. So that survey kind of gives us ideas on, okay, what should we be helping to resource more? Which areas? Is it access to particular tech that in certain regions they don't have access to? Is it financial support for people who are innovators? Is it gender representation? Do we have women saying that they're facing more challenges than men? Is it people from the global south saying that they have certain barriers that they need to overcome for them to actively participate in conservation tech? So we do our survey, get to understand the needs, and then curate resources that meet those needs. And that's how we develop our programming. And then that's what makes it more effective because it's something that is meeting a need that is that's targeted towards all different communities.
And so what's the power of like you're saying, of bringing like the global south, minorities and indigenous I guess like people into this conversation, and maybe give some examples of what you've seen in the conservation program in Tanzania and what you've been working on for the past year or so?
Very good question. That's a very good question. I think beyond touching on the Women in Conservation Tech program, I think the community itself, the WildLabs community itself, we feature people from different spaces who are working on different issues, and it gives people from different places a perspective. And so you might be based in maybe Europe, and you realize that somebody in Kenya is facing a similar challenge in human wildlife conflict mitigation, and maybe they have developed a tool that is applicable to your problem. And so when you check the discussions forum, you notice, oh, these are people from different parts of the world connecting on a similar issue, and finding resources that could benefit the two of them. And so people notice the similarities between the global north and the global south, but of course there are disparities in landscape, as well as the challenges and the resources that are available. And so I think it's noticing the similarities, but also the differences, and how we can kind of bridge some of those differences if they're challenges. And so we have even feature series like In Conversation, which I spent most of last year doing, where I featured East African conservation technologists and the work that they do. And it's exciting to see that people from other spaces are appreciating the work that they're doing and reaching out to them, maybe to get some knowledge exchange, or even to collaborate. There are people who are noticing that they're facing similar challenges, or they have information that other regions need, and so they have some level of collaboration and knowledge exchange. So it's exciting to see the differences, and we appreciate some of those differences, but also noticing that there's a lot of space of similarity, and that is encouraging a lot of collaboration, which we need to see, because it's, again, in the conservation tech space, we need cross collaboration as much as possible, because we have people who have a background in conservation and they understand the issues on the ground, they understand biodiversity, and then we have technologists who understand tech and they understand how tech can help to solve problems. So if you bring those two groups of people together, where here are people who understand the problem and here are people who can develop for the problem, and they come together, they can effectively solve whichever wildlife conservation challenge that is being faced. So we really do encourage as much cross sector collaboration as possible, and also across the globe, people collaborating and seeing how they can kind of bridge those gaps across.
So Alex, you've also been part of the conservation technology and like spreading the word about it, such as the World Wildlife Day this year at the United Nations in New York. So, well, first of all, I want to ask you, like, what's the importance of such events for conservation technology, and what were maybe some of your like takeaways from the Wildlife Day in 2024?
Yeah, this year's World Wildlife Day was so special, and obviously it was under the theme of sort of connecting technology into wildlife conservation, which was such a joy for WildLabs to participate in, because, like we've sort of been talking about, conservation tech isn't, I think, very well known, especially in the conservation space and like the nature tech space. So it was really exciting to have a forum to talk about all the exciting work that's being done in conservation using technology. And I think any event like this sort of opens up people's eyes to see sort of the breadth of what conservation technology is and what it's capable of doing, because, you know, like I mentioned at the start of the interview, I think so many people are using tech in so many different aspects of daily life, in research, and basically every corner of science. And as soon as you sort of open people's eyes to being like, this is what conservation tech is and can be, you start to sort of see it everywhere. So it's a really exciting forum just to bring conservation tech to the forefront of the conversation, because, you know, having it be in, you know, top of people's minds means that there are more opportunities for collaboration, for funding, for partnerships, and, you know, putting resources where we need them most. And I had such an amazing time at World Wildlife Day. And it was a little bit funny because that event was like 6 weeks after I started at WildLabs, which was me starting at WildLabs was my very first introduction to conservation tech. So it was a whole new industry, a whole new sector for me. And there I was sort of at the UN, thrown into like this whole social circle and professional sphere that I was basically brand new to. So some of the takeaways that I had might be obvious for people that have been in the sector for a little bit longer, but because it was, you know, sort of so early in my tenure, they might be different for somebody else. But one of the things that actually our executive manager of WildLabs, Steph O'Donnell, talked about that was really eye-opening for me was sort of seeing conservation tech as more than just the hardware. I think so much of what people think of when they think of conservation tech is, you know, the GPS collars, the camera traps, the drones, the sort of like sexy tools that people are using, because those are the things that are shiny and new and exciting. But really, all of those tools are just a means for collecting data, and the data is what's at the core of conservation tech and is what allows us to, you know, assess how species are doing and to inform public policy. Like, the data is the real crux of what we're doing here. And that sort of idea led her and led me into this idea of seeing conservation tech more broadly as this like three-pronged sort of ecosystem of more than just tech developers, the people that are making those, that are developing those drones and camera traps and machine learning models and whatnot, but also the people that are, you know, scaling those to be mass producible and affordable and accessible to people all over the world, as well as obviously the people who are actually using that tech in the field, like rangers or field biologists or whatnot. And so for me, World Wildlife Day was such an amazing opportunity to sort of zoom out and like expand what I knew conservation tech to think of, because I think as we zoom out and see all of the different players in the field, you're able to sort of better connect them to each other. And I think having a more interconnected and, you know, better supported field all across the area is what's going to allow us to make strides in research, make strides in saving wildlife and whatnot. Because I think when people only see conservation tech as the tools, it's really easy to sort of channel funding and resources into those sort of eye-catching projects, when in reality it's just as important that the, you know, the tech accelerators who are doing like the quote-unquote like less sexy work of like making a product affordable and mass producible, it's great if we have like 1,000 cool gadgets that there's only one in existence across the whole world, but it's way more important to have a few gadgets that are cheap and accessible and do the job really, really well. And spreading resources across all those different areas of conservation tech, I think, is what's going to really drive the sector forward in the most meaningful way. And that was probably my biggest takeaway from World Wildlife Day.
Love that. Okay. And so for like people in general, based on both of your like experiences, because I know at least for Alex, you haven't necessarily been in Wild Labs for super long, but you have been interested in like everything in this field for longer. So I guess what advice or information did you like wish you knew, or do you think people should know if they want to enter conservation technology?
I guess I came from sort of left field into this sector. I was coming from like healthcare communications background, and I think this is sort of career advice for anybody in general, especially for younger people like ourselves who are still in like the first decade or two of their career, is that pivoting career paths is so feasible, and it can feel so daunting and impossible at some points, especially if you're making like a really sharp turn into an entirely different sector with an entirely different like skill set and knowledge base. But it is always possible, and I think it does get a little bit harder as you get older, but it's never impossible, and absolutely worth pursuing any sort of change like that if that's what's going to bring you closer to doing work that feels authentic and meaningful. And again, that's not advice specific to conservation tech, but it's definitely something I probably needed to hear more of when I was graduating university.
Uh-huh. And you, Esther?
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I knew Wild Labs 5 years ago, when I was getting into conservation, because when I got into conservation, it was generally traditional, and no one was talking about conservation tech. It was talking about climate tech, clean tech, agri tech, and thinking about the fact that we're in a digital era right now. No one was bringing up conservation tech, and I think it was because it was such a niche space. But honestly, I wish that I had known that, because thinking about our generation, I think we really we really believe in work that is meaningful. And I think we're the most environmentally and socially conscious generation ever. And so there's that idea of like, if I'm taking up work, it needs to have a purpose. I just don't good work and earn an income if I'm not able to do something positive for the world or the society. And maybe it's because we grew up watching cool like superhero movies and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we all think that we have a bit of like superhero kind of persona in us. And so there's the idea of, if I'm taking up a career, I need to take up a career that has like a moral compass. And especially today when we're dealing with the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis, I think a lot of young people want to take up careers and want to take up specialization in fields that are going to save our planet eventually. And so if I had known there was a space like this, I would have definitely specialized in conservation technology, because as we are so environmentally and socially conscious, we are also so tech savvy. And I think this is a tech generation, and tech is just getting more advanced and cooler and can solve more problems. And so thinking about, we're in a space where the environmental crisis is the most, I think, threatening crisis that we're dealing with right now, because it's existential. Like, if it's really affecting our populations and biodiversity. And so if what we're actively focused on developing, because we right now, the thing that every single country is focused on developing is its technological capacity. That's what every business, every innovator is focused on. It's developing tech to be super advanced. So if we take this thing that we're developing that's so advanced, and this issue that we have that's so complex, and we think, wait, why can't we just use tech to solve this problem? Like, if there's anything that we can do with tech, surely at this point, is solve the climate crisis and save our biodiversity. And so I think a lot of young people would really be, if they know about it, because I always say that if you don't know about something, you can't really take it up or have an interest in it until you get to know about it. And that's why at Wild Labs, we're very committed to awareness raising and getting as many people aware of conservation tech as possible. And a couple of months ago, I did a International Women's Day event with She Changes Climate, and I remember there was a woman in the crowd when we did the presentation on women in conservation tech and what conservation tech is. She said, "Oh my God, I'm going to share this with my nieces and nephews. This is such a cool career space to be in, and I had no idea that it existed." And so awareness raising is so important. And that's why we also have spaces like this where we can speak with you, Maya, and Gen Z, where we get people understanding like conservation tech is a space you can get in it. How do you get in it? Join WILDLABS, explore resources, speak with one of us, and get access to what this career opportunity looks like for you. But I really think that young people would be very interested in taking up conservation tech careers because of what it offers in terms of it's a meaningful job, but it also is really cool because there's a lot of tech being used. And so, I 5 years ago, if I knew about this, definitely I'd be a conservation technologist, like connoisseur right now. But it's never too late. Just like Alex mentioned, career paths change. We have conservationists who are getting into conservation tech now when they're upskilling in tech. We have technologists who, they're super, they have great expertise in tech, but they're understanding the conservation part of it so that they can develop tools that are effective. So it's never too late to start, but we need to let people know that conservation tech exists and it's a career opportunity that they can look into because it's really important. We need such careers for the future. These are the green jobs we talk about for the future. And I think a lot of time when people talk about green jobs, people have been thinking about communications, being a ranger, being out in the field. But this, I think, is the next frontier of what green jobs is.
Mm-hmm. And for you, Alex, since you've also had like this kind of like, I guess, career switch nearly, how did it bring meaning to your life?
That's a great question. I think part of the reason why I decided to switch careers from like the healthcare communications into conservation was because I wanted to feel like the work that I was doing every day was contributing to, sort of a greater good and a cause that was more aligned with my personal values. And there was a ton of value added, I think, at my old job doing healthcare communications, but I had always been super passionate about conservation, about climate change, about wildlife, about the outdoors since I was, a child. And I think that when I was in college and I wasn't pursuing a degree in sustainability or biology, I just assumed that all of those doors were going to be closed for me. And then when I saw this job posting for WILDLABS for my current position, that was the first time I had ever heard of conservation technology, which I think is definitely telling for the general population probably and their awareness of what conservation technology is. And as soon as I started reading about it, I was like, of course this is a field, and of course this is so exciting and thrilling that people are doing all of this really, really interesting and just straight up cool research, and whether it's research or monitoring or whatever else, using all this incredible tech for wildlife conservation. And so now it feels like everything that I do every day is actively contributing to building and sort of fortifying this global community of conservation technology, which is, like I said, because it is sort of still an earlier stage field. It definitely requires a lot of love and care and TLC to sort of build those bridges and build those connections that it's going to unlock all of the sort of collaboration that's needed. Because I don't know who said it or what the exact phrasing is, but it's if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, which is essentially what WILDLABS is doing, is trying to build these bridges, build these connections, and put all these amazing minds together as best as we can to solve all these conservation questions and challenges in the most efficient way possible. So it feels really good at the end of the day, closing my computer, being I did something good for the world today, which always feels nice.
Yeah, honestly, it seems so exciting, all the different prospects you have and the different things you can go into. But yeah, other than that, I wanted to ask, so well, how do you see the future in the field? Because it's emerging, it's changing, and there's so much that upcoming different things that could be happening in the field. So how do you envision the future of the field, and what are you excited about?
Yeah, I'm really curious and excited about just sort of, I think, the sector maturing more through the passage of time, but also through increased resource injection that we're definitely seeing happening more through just like partnerships and collaborations, because I think there's so much rich room for development and progression in the field, that all we really need is like the resources and the sort of attention of like the more global stage to make those things happen. And we're seeing those changes happen slowly but surely, even over the last like 6 months that since I've been a part of the team. And it is very, very exciting to think about how the sector will look like if and when sort of we're getting the resources and funding and partnerships that so many other industries have, because I think it'll really just help people, take off in their research and their tech development, in the scaling and usability of making sure that tech is accessible and affordable throughout like the entire world. I think it's going to make huge waves in all our wildlife conservation efforts.
Absolutely. I think, for me personally, I strongly believe that conservation technology is the next frontier in the environmental space. I think, in the next few years, I think everyone will be talking about it. And I would hope that, we could attend international climate conferences like COP, and have like conservation tech have its own like day, and have its own forum where, international policymakers and multilateral organizations will be part of the conversation actively. And I think solutions as well. I really want to see cross collaboration where we have different sectors collaborating with conservationists to understand the problems on the ground, and technologists who can develop it and innovate for those solutions. And just thinking about like Mayo in civil engineering, and what we were speaking about earlier, like thinking about planning and like you mentioned, flooding being one of the key issues that is, because right now, like in East Africa, we had of course the threat of Cyclone Idai, and we had a lot of flooding that was happening. And people forget that yes, there's the human impact. We do have climate refugees, but they forget that there's also the impact on biodiversity. A lot of biodiversity was lost, and we've seen the same happening even in Brazil. I've seen a lot of videos online of a lot of wildlife that has died, and that has been moved from one place to another, and that has lost its ecosystem. And so as we are also thinking about spaces like architecture and development and building and urban planning, we need to think about those things. We need to think about all the spaces that are in alignment with our natural world, which is all the spaces, and we tend to forget that almost all spaces work in tandem with our natural world, and our natural world is being impacted, and that we can't run away from the impact it's going to have on the people and on the planet. And so, for me, it's just seeing solutions actually being enacted and people coming together and innovating, innovations being tested, those innovations being scaled, and us actually seeing in our day and age that problems that, have been like ruled out, like this problem cannot be being solved. And that's not just sitting and saying, oh, that problem, like a lot of times I think with issues of environment, like people have now reached a space where they're so okay saying, oh, it's bypassed us. We can't solve it. The climate crisis is too bad. Now we can't solve it. We just have to wait, for whatever's going to happen. And I think we have all this tech. Surely we have a lot of knowledge spaces, and, cross collaboration can really help us to solve and kind of reverse what's been happening. And so, yeah, for me, it's seeing conservation tech getting platforms in international environment forums, because it's a space that's solely built on solutions, and having more cross collaboration to enact solutions and have them being tested and being scaled across the world, because the little that we're seeing happening so far is really effective. And so if it can get more on a regional scale, on a global scale, I think it'll really help us, move from that narrative of like pessimism and saying, oh no, problems, the environmental challenge has gone too far, we can't solve it, and we move to a space where we're hopeful and we say, you know what, no, conservation tech is there, like they'll innovate something cool and like solve this problem. So moving from like a hopeless state of mind to like a more like, oh, that is definitely solvable. Conservation tech exists. We can solve that. We can manage that. So for me, it's just having that hope for our planet, and conservation tech being given a platform.
Mm. Yeah, and from what you guys mentioned, like today, and I even said a bit at the start, it's like it seems like conservation technology isn't just this like tiny little thing on a like microscopic scale. It's like global, and all these topics are so relevant. So, yeah. So then also to conclude, if people want to like find out more on conservation technology or WILDLABS, what are the links or where can they find you?
Yeah, our website has basically all of the information you could need, which is wildlabs.net, which is also social handles on Twitter, or formerly Twitter, currently X, Instagram, as well, wildlabs.net, as well as LinkedIn. And our website specifically will have information on the sort of three pillars of our work, which is community, research, and resourcing, between programs like Women in Conservation Technology or the WILDLABS Awards, to like our community sort of discussion forum where people are resourcing or crowdsourcing answers to the questions and troubleshooting problems that they're having in their research, as well as the research that we're conducting on the state of conservation tech. Our website, wildlabs.net, is definitely the place to find all of those gems.
Absolutely. When people go to WILDLABS, we invite all of them to show up for Variety Hour. I think Alex will be doing our Variety Hour for this month next week. So please, when you join WILDLABS, sign up for Variety Hour, show up for at least one. I promise you show up for one, you'll be engaged. I think the conversation there is vibrant, it's exciting, it's new. You'll start using WILDLABS and getting acquainted with people.
Joining our events like Variety Hour is definitely the best way to get a quick snapshot of what people are doing in the sector, and to see exactly how all of these connections and collaborations are being formed, because they happen sort of live at Variety Hour in the chat section of our Zoom link, which is really exciting to see.
Well, thank you to you both for coming today and talking about this topic.
Thank you for having us.
This was the 10th episode of the Gen Z in STEM podcast, so thank you so much for tuning in. And as Esther and Alex said, you can go to WILDLABS.net to find out more about conservation technology. And also, if you enjoyed it, please subscribe, leave a comment about what you want to see, give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and stay tuned, because we're going to have some really nice episodes coming up. Thank you so much for tuning in, and bye.